Hello everyone, my name is Prakriti Rai and the presentation of my topic is Instinct for Repression as it is the reading part 2 of this week reading, and here goes my presentation and contents of presentation. So basically I want to start with the introduction of Joseph McCarthy, as the whole reading of my part was basically based on his views and his thinking and what he did or thought about communism and what did he do against his opponent, or what did he do towards the Truman administration, and what did he thought about the Truman administration helping or providing aid to the Korean War. And rest of my presentation are based on the questions and the answers that I asked for this week reading. So here we start the presentation. So Joseph McCarthy, in full name Joseph Raymond McCarthy, he was born in 1908, November 14, near Appleton, Wisconsin, US, died May 2, 1957, Bethesda, Maryland. So if we look at his birth date and the date, he basically lived a short-lived life, and it is said that the cause of his death was hepatitis, but many researchers also say that he died due to the alcoholism, the uh, high, very high, sorry, I'm not getting the word right now, very high consumption of alcohol. And we could see that McCarthy served for 3 years as a circuit judge, 1940 to 42, before enlisting in U.S. Marine Corps in World War II. In 1946, he won the nomination for Senate in a stunning upset primary victory. So, as I researched about him, it is said that he basically stated that his opponent didn't enlist enlist during World War II, and he did. And he also told about his heroic times, what he did during World War II. Basically, this one can be one of the reasons why he won the Senate position in the election, as he became one of the youngest senator in the history. So continuing about the biography of McCarthy, he was at first a quite an undistinguished senator. He was very popular as speaker, invited by different organizations covering wide ranges of topics. So basically in his serving time of senator, he provoked different kinds of topics, and more likely he pressed and exploited the fear of communism in American people and America. So it was after the time of the World War II, and it was the time when communism was spreading throughout the world, and he pressed at the Truman administration, saying that uh, many workers in the State Departments were a spy of Soviet Union. And he gained increasing popular support for his campaign of accusation by capitalizing on the fears and frustration of a country weary of the Korean War. During the Korean War, when President Truman dismissed General Douglas MacArthur, McCarthy charged that Truman and his advisor must have planned the dismissal during late night session when they had time to get the president cheerful. So he was quite against the Truman administration, and he was also very much disappointed as MacArthur was dismissed from his position during the Korean War, and not only that, he was not only that, it is said that during the Lincoln Day, he basically declared that uh, he has the list of the names who were working as the Korean, no, not Korean, sorry, who were working as a Soviet spy in the State Department, and basically was it that topic was blown out, and it basically uh, saved the whole American State Department, and and not only that, he made fear for the workers who were working in the State Department as for the loyalty risks, and they were quite in the time where they were at that position where they could lose their jobs through through a kind of accusation by McCarthy, and he was popular. Of course, he was popular, continuously provoking Truman administration and his work. But of course, meaning popular not only mean in good term, but also it had the bad side, and he got constant criticism and scandal over different things, like Taft-Hartley Act over Truman veto and lobbying communism. And because of that, he charged that the U.S. Army was engaged in a cover-up of judicial misconduct, but never presented any evidence to support the accusation. So let's continue the presentation. As here is the question number one from my reading. As McCarthy exemplified a destructive ideological era of capitalism and communism, USA versus Soviet and China whenever stood in place of arguments. Explain your understanding towards the destructive ideological era. So, in my point of view, some of you might have misunderstood what I tried to ask in this question, but I think my point of view was simple. Back in the history, if we look back at our history, we can say that the continuous clash of capitalism and communism. We also know the Cold War between the USA and Soviet, and how did it started and how did it ended. And we also know that this ideology between these two countries, USA capitalism and Soviet communism, not only affected these two countries only, but it also took part in other countries also. As we know that during that period time, no matter what was the war about, basically they supported those one who were based or who were representing the ideologies of their side. And here's our my answer. So, destruction in ideological area, as I explained before, two most famous ideology which still rule the world in its own division. Basically, in the past, if it was between the USA and Soviet, and right now it's basically has become about USA and China, as we know that Soviet doesn't exist now, and as I said before, where America mostly represented capitalism and Soviet represented communism. Well, we can say China also, but it came to scenario a little later, and it's still now also. But in today's scenario, we cannot see Soviet. And continuing about this question, we all know that before the famous ideology war in the history known as Cold War, so basically all those things about the ideologies, and the war about the ideology, things were like things were existed pretty much before of this Cold War era also. And we all know about the World War II. How did it happen? Why did it happen? And what was the result? As we know, the cause, like the Hitler who want Hitler and his Nazi government, as we know his famous ideology, fascism, and his fascist government. How we want to conquer all the Europe and all the world, as we are as the fascism and its ideology talked about being only one leader. So it was things about the past, and coming to the World War, as the World War existed between the USA and Soviet. But we all know that USA and Soviet never fought with each other face to face or directly, but we can see continuous clash between this country ideology and support in the history and history book. As we can see in Korean War, it was more likely the brother fighting with brothers, as there was a split in Korea. And we can see the support of USA to South Korea, as it provided aid army also. But in Korean War, we know that Soviet didn't provide it the aid, but we know that there was the hand or the part of Soviet during the Korean split, as Soviet wanted to conquer and rule over Korea, but in opposite side, USA didn't want to rule over Koreas, and it also didn't want it to give up on uh, give up on the part of Korea. So they basically, decided to split the Korea in the 30th parallel line. And maybe if there wasn't the Korean split in the 30th parallel line, there wouldn't have been Korean War also. Who knows about that? And we all know the Vietnam Civil War, as the North Vietnam was supported by Soviet, China, Laos, Cambodia, etc. And the South Vietnam was supported by United States, South Korea, Philippines, Australia, etc., etc. So as we know from the supporters also, what kind of point were from the two sides of the Vietnam, we can get that from the north side was basically from the communism, and the south side was also from was from the capitalism side. And then the question is, how did these two ideology have the biggest part in Korean War? I explained little before, so let's see here. As Joseph McCarthy explained that in ideological area, level stood in place of arguments and evidence, made next to no differences. USA and Soviet had history with each other after the World War II, as they were the countries who had great power to rule over the world. It is said that it is said that both the countries didn't want to give up on Korea, fearing it will be annexed by opposition parties' ideology. So they decided to split the Korea with 38th parallel line. And we can say, as I have said before, if there wasn't a split between the Korea, then there wouldn't have been, like the Korean War, or maybe we wouldn't have seen it in the history, and there wouldn't have been many casualties. But it's only in my imagination or many other imagination. We never know what would it have happened, but what had happened, and it's only on our mind of thinking. So yeah, this was my answer for question number 1. And coming to question number 2,